Hello, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to go over 5 reasons why you should not buy the GMT900 Tahoe. Then I'll end the list off with its reliability. And the first reason is that it's made cheaply. The first indication of that is that the clear coat is chipping off these plastic pieces back here and here. So this seems to happen to majority of these Tahoes. The previous owner, my wife's dad, cleaned and waxed this car religiously. So it seems to be just a thing that's gonna happen. Now, if we take a close look down here, 2 things point out pretty obvious to me. 1, the paint is fading off of these, and 2, this black plastic is fading significantly. It does not look good at all. And that extends to the rear windshield wiper as well, the mirrors, and the cowl. Now, the reason the cowl actually looks pretty good is because I used some of those Cerakote packages to renew this trim, and it's done a pretty great job. And I actually did these mirrors as well. I'm just a bit hesitant to do on these step-ups because I was afraid that it could make it slippery, but filming this, I don't think it will. And well, the headlights look butt ugly as well. So moving on into the interior, we have to discuss the leather seats. For 200,000 miles, these leather seats are not too bad, but they're just not built to last as long as the engine is. So it has wear and tear on all the spots that you would normally touch whenever you get in and out of the vehicle. Honestly, not too bad. And now since we're in the interior, we're still talking about it being made cheaply. And this is where it really shines on how cheap it is. So this entire dashboard is made of very cheap ABS plastic. So this dash is actually after I repaired all the cracks. So before I repaired all the cracks, this dash was making so much noise, so many rattles, so much movement. It was insane. And a new dash for the Tahoe is gonna run you at least $600 plus shipping, and that's from GM. This is an upper trim piece for the dash, and that's a new one, and all the clips on the old one broke off, so that was also bouncing around just like this. And to repair this dash, I used staples to connect all the cracks, and I use fiberglass on the back to reinforce it. It's not a perfect job, but it definitely is better than not doing anything. And then to top off all that, you can get a dash cap that will hide all the cracks, which is something I'll probably be doing in the near future. Even with that dash repaired, there's still a lot of rattles and creaks that's just coming from quite a few different spots in the Tahoe, since it is made of cheap plastic. So that's just something you gotta deal with, especially with an older GM product. So next we need to talk about fuel economy and its size. So these Tahoes are rated at 15 to 20 miles per gallon. We live in a city and we are averaging around 14.8 miles per gallon. And on the highway, we get roughly 18, 19 miles per gallon, depending on how we drive and if we choose to use cruise control or not. So the reason it gets such bad fuel economy is because its size. It's basically a tank, right? It's not the biggest SUV that you can get, but it's still pretty large. I felt like I really needed to mention this because there's a lot of people who might just be themselves and maybe a partner who would want or own one of these Tahoes. So if you have only a family of 1 to 2 and you're not doing a whole bunch of towing or lugging around a whole bunch of stuff in the back, which we do, then this is probably not the best bet. Since it's larger, it's also not very maneuverable, right? So you can't park in every parking spot, and it's definitely not the most agile thing. However, if you daily drive it, you will get used to all of that. My third point is its depreciation. So new, these GMT 900s cost around $50,000. Now, with higher mileage, maybe 150, 200K, you'll be buying it for about $6,000 to $8,000. Now, that mileage is really not that bad depending on which motor you get, because these motors, well, of the exception of one, which I'll talk about in a minute, will easily surpass 200K and should see 400K if you take care of it. And if we talk about the GMT 800s, the previous generation from this one, that new price was around $36,000, and they sell for between $4,000 to $6,000 with higher-ish miles. So this Tahoe has not depreciated to its full extent just yet, and it will continue to depreciate within the next 5 to 10 years. But for being a used vehicle and being an SUV, the depreciation is really not that bad, and it really holds its own, especially compared to other cars like the the Chevy Malibu. So it's really not a bad purchase price. That's something that you need to consider, and perhaps a better suitable car would be the GMT 800. So the next thing to consider is it being outdated. And the biggest issue with it being outdated is the stock infotainment system. The buttons wear out, it only has an aux plug-in, no Bluetooth. So what you could easily do, and what we did, is upgrade the head unit with an Apple CarPlay version. And that's paired with this rear view camera. And I would much rather prefer it being right here, but as GM fashion and it being cheap plastics, I could not remove this piece because the bolts were spinning freely. And what stops the bolts from spinning freely is plastic tabs. So we gotta deal with what we gotta deal with. And to install this is actually very easy. And if you do want to install a new one, I'll link that video down below because I already did it. Basically, you just remove this plastic piece. It's a whole shroud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 8mm bolts that you just remove. Remove the unit, unplug it, and then plug in the new one. And that's basically it. So new cars have soft touch material, even the new cheap Tahoes and all that stuff, all on the dash. Now, the soft touch really increases the quality of the interior feel. I think that's a big deal. Now, they do have hard plastic on the lower panels, but on the upper panels, they do have soft touch on the new Tahoes. And this one actually has soft touch too. It's just not as nice. It doesn't have self-driving, it doesn't have mirror blinkers, you know, all the stuff you kind of expect. And to some, which I don't agree, is that it looks outdated. To me, it doesn't. I think it still holds its own with the new crowd of cars. Now I guess what time it is. It's time to talk about its reliability. So as you might assume, these Tahoes are actually very, very reliable. And with over 200,000 miles, this particular Tahoe has had very minor issues. Now, I did have to replace the engine at 180, 70,000 miles, but that's because when I first got to Tahoe, the previous owner got the oil change at a dealer, and the dealer did not tighten the drain plug tight enough. Therefore, all the oil drained out, and I ran the engine dry out of oil. Outside of that, replacing the engine is actually pretty easy, relatively easy. But what is unreliable about these Tahoes is if you have the 5.3 liter model. Now, the 5.3s has an active fuel management, and this is a V8, so what that management does is it drops 4 cylinders, and the engine's only pumping with 4 cylinders. So it goes from a V8 to a V4. Now, the issue that arises with that is that these dead 4 cylinders are inactive. And if you are in V4 quite often on your daily routines, the piston rings can get gummed up and allow oil to seep through, effectively causing you to burn oil. And when you start to burn that oil, a lot of owners don't check the oil routinely. You will ultimately blow your motor. And being in that 4-cylinder mode with such a big, heavy truck is really not that helpful. And it really doesn't help that much in gas. Could get something that plugs into the computer and that deletes the AFM. But the best route would be to actually remove all the AFM components within the motor and install a delete kit. Or just keep topping off your oil like you do gas, and then you'll be just fine. If you want to see 5 reasons why you should buy the Tahoe, check out this video. This is Chris. Always appreciate and respect one another. I'll see you next time.